As time passes us by, it passes the W210 as well. Years of weather, accidents, neglect, and failure of components continue to remove more and more off of our roads each year. So this is the time to stop the cycle, to do our best to keep ours on the road for not only tomorrow, but every tomorrow after that. My name is Jim, and today we'll answer what we can do to keep these machines on the road, so welcome to this in-depth guide. Over the exterior, we first can inspect for rust, around the top of the windshield, around the sunroof, fenders, the doors, under the trunk license plate frame, and checking underneath the door seals. Also at these front and rear rocker panels, we can clean out the rubber drain holes to prevent future issues. Pulling up the rear seat, checking for corrosion caused by water or battery acid, and also checking for corrosion in the connector for the air pump that operates the locks. Failure can cause security system malfunctions later on. Speaking of the security system, the alarm siren fails in all of these older Mercedes due to its terrible internal battery corroding design. It is expensive at around $160 to replace, but failure can cause many issues with battery drain and other weird malfunctions. Another option is to take the fuse out and deactivate this part of the system. Next, let's look at the ride, which is more problematic in higher mileage vehicles, but strut replacement like I did helps to make the ride feel a bit more sporty, while also soaking up the bumps. I use these Bilstein V8 shocks, but you could use factory replacements as well. I advocate for checking the spring perches as well for rust, as water can sit in there and cause future issues. Also check front lower control on ball joints and control arms themselves for rust. Nobody likes a drop front end when these go out. Also check rear subframe and differential mount bushings. Loose wheel bearings can lead to poor steering response and additional noise and wear. There is a pretty easy adjustment procedure for these underneath the grease cap here. Check brake pads and rotors. These rotors are only getting more expensive, at least on my E55, and thankfully, when properly maintained, they do work quite well for the long haul. It should go without saying, but since tires are one of the few things that connect you to the road, make sure to check the date codes on them, as old tires are not only hazardous but can be hard, have flat spots, and just generally reduce handling performance and driving enjoyment. A maximum of 6 years is a good rule of thumb for replacement, though cheap quality tires may end useful life sooner. Keeping your engine running nice and smooth helps maintain the premium power delivery feel. Start by checking for dry rotted vacuum hoses and other pesky vacuum leaks, especially these top breather hoses and the nipples that are here on either side of the valve covers. Drilling and tapping and installing a brass fitting can fix this issue. This valve cover had corroded so far it had broken off and had been causing a vacuum leak for quite some time. Adding a clamp can also help on this hose, as well as they just seem to have a way of splitting open over time. You can clean your MAF with inexpensive MAF cleaner. I tried that on mine, but ended up replacing mine with a $135 Bosch unit. I personally do not recommend cheaper MAF versions, as many have issues with these. After replacing mine, I noticed smoother idle and a sharper increase in throttle response. Keep in mind that my E55 has nearly 200,000 miles, so lower mileage cars may be fine with their original. I like to run a bottle of fuel injector cleaner every 10 or so fuel fill-ups, just as a preventative to prevent sticky injectors that can cause serious problems down the road. Of course, like all Mercedes of this era, please replace your crank position sensor if you don't know if it has been done. It's $22 and can save you a no-start headache down the road. It takes me about 5 minutes to replace mine. Replacing often failed engine mounts is likely one of the most common problems for rough engine idle. Another place I recommend replacing with OEM grade or even stronger than OEM uprated versions, as the cheap ones simply do not last. I also recommend changing transmissions mount at the same time. Next is oil. Now everyone has their preference, but for the quietest engine, I recommend liquid moly hands down, even though it is a bit more pricey and harder to source locally. I run 5W40 in all of my AMGs, and I've noticed an audible reduction of engine noise when switching to it from Castrol, Mobil 1, and Royal Purple products. I also recommend changing the oil often and using the factory style fleece oil filters. Oil leaks are another common thing with most older vehicles, and the W210s are no exception. Rear main, front main, timing cover, oil pan, valve covers, and oil filter housing are common leak spots. The power steering reservoir seal and lines are also common places for the power steering system to leak. At least a dipstick is present to check the oil levels. I like to check once a week to keep an eye on it and really don't become overly concerned with small leaks. It seems like if you fix them all, just another one will pop up, so having one thing broken sometimes can be ideal. While we are in the engine bay, I also suggest inspecting coolant hoses, as this is starting to get to the age where they begin to fail. Also a good idea to check the fan here and the pulley for excessive play, as that can indicate a soon-to-fail water pump. I had to replace this T here with metal, as the OEM plastic T broke when I bumped it under the hood, and it hosed me good with scalding hot coolant. I should have been more careful and should have known better. A BMW E36 got me in the face years ago. Another weak spot is right here on the expansion tank, and simply checking coolant levels every few hundred miles is ideal to prevent surprises. Keep an eye on the harmonic balancer on this engine. Not a super common failure point, but something to at least check during normal service intervals. Service the transmission if you do not know its history. Quality fluid, filter, 13-pin adapter, and pan seal are usually under $100 and great to prevent future problems. Resetting transmission adaptations through the pedal can help to liven it up a bit too after service. Other good practices are not using your cup holders, or at least being extremely careful not to get the shifter wet, and keep an eye out for a leaky sunroof as well, as it will leak right onto the shifter. Speaker grill covers are commonly known to be brittle and, just like mine, break at the slightest bit of pressure and are expensive to replace. Also, this mirror switch is easy to break, and well, the mechanical cup holder is as well. I recommend keeping this greased up. I like to use the silicone grease that I use for my mechanical watch gaskets. Just like the speaker covers, the sunroof grille became brittle on my E55 and shattered, so I had to replace that as well. Also, check the headlights that they work. The wiring insulation cracks over time and can lead to issues, and the rear trunk section of lights also like to leak water commonly. Speaking of lights, pixels on the in-dash screen are a common failure point. This can be a pretty easy to do DIY fix with replacement screen ribbons. All this being said, these cars continue to be excellent daily drivers, and it is unlikely that your car will face every issue on this list. It is certainly not meant to make anyone shy of owning one. They don't really have any unusual or high parts costs that I have personally faced in, say, my W211 E55 with a $400 oil line, for example. Another advantage is the absolute acres of room you get in this engine bay compared to, say, my C55. There may be more things that I have missed, so let us know below what experiences you have had with your W210, and until next time, bye for now.